Good afternoon, good morning to all of you, and thanks for participating to the online session on non-conventional waters to achieve water, food, and human security at the 2025 World Water Week. My name is Elena Bresci, Associate Professor at the University of Florence in Italy, Department of Agriculture, Food, Environment and Forestry, and here as coordinator of the PRIMA-funded project AguaMed, whose main objective has been to advancing participatory governance for a sustainable water allocation by integrating non-conventional water resources in the Mediterranean area, and which is arrived at its end on 31st of August 2025. In the framework of AguaMed dissemination activities, this session at the World Water Week will contribute to foster the discussion on the role of non-conventional water resources use under a vision of climate change through presentations given by experts in the non-conventional water subject. The project AguaMed integrated hydrological modeling of non-conventional water resources, participatory research with local stakeholders, and socio-economic analysis to assess the potential of these water resources to address the supply-demand gap and to identify barriers to their implementation. One of the main outcomes of the project are policy plans for each living labs intended to support the promotion of these resources at the local and Mediterranean level. You can read more on the project website available on the chat. Coming to the session, there will be space for questions and answer at the end of all the presentations. You can write the questions on the chat with also your name and affiliation. If there will be too many questions, a follow-up session will be proposed. This session is co-moderated by Dr. Enrico Lucca, postdoc at the University of Florence. It is now time to start, and the first speaker is Professor Manzoor Kadir, research professor at the Institute for Water, Environment and Health of the United Nations University. Professor Manzoor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Barisi, for the kind introduction. I'll be pleased actually to share with you two community-based water harvesting systems, one from the air and the other from on the ground. In terms of harvesting water from air, I'll discuss fog and dew water collection. Whereas in terms of capturing small amounts of rainwater, which otherwise just go back to the environment through evaporation, in terms of micro-catchment rainwater harvesting systems. So that would be the other interventions I'll be discussing. In terms of fog water collection, apparently it seems that fog rarely contributes to some sizable amount of water for community-based needs. But in fact, now the intervention is available, particularly in areas where local water shortages are there, and the rainfall is either unreliable or insufficient to meet the water needs. But these are very specific candidate areas where fog events are frequent. The fog is really dense, and the winds are happening and they are persistent in one direction, and the topographic features of the area are very suitable to intercept fog, particularly those areas which are either dry mountainous or coastal regions. This is basically a green intervention. It needs minimal operation and maintenance, and it does not rely on energy consumption. There are several bright spots, functional bright spots of uh, fog water collection systems in dry areas around the world, particularly in those areas where the fog persists between 60 to 360 days a year. And in terms of yield, although it's very variable, but the communities can get from 2 to 20 liters per cubic meter of the mesh size. And I'd like actually to mention that the fog yield largely depends on three major aspects: its intensity, duration, and frequency. In terms of trade-offs, we can't implement fog water harvesting systems everywhere because the site characterization is very important in order to ensure that it meets the needs to implement a fog water collection system there. The engagement of community has a fundamental importance in this regard, as well as gender mainstreaming. The reasons are that usually the women and girls are responsible in these areas to fetch water from far distances. So if they are engaged in the process and through the engagement of the local communities and local institutions, we have seen very vibrant, productive, and sustainable fog water collection systems. Since these systems are usually implemented in areas where the communities are usually low-income countries, here we also need to consider some innovative financial mechanisms such as initial subsidies or soft loans. In terms of the other intervention, which refers to microcatchment rainwater harvesting systems, it's in dry areas where the rainwater fall is really limited and with high seasonal variability, and much of the rainwater just goes back to the environment through evaporation. But in case of microcatchment rainwater harvesting systems, they can support local needs of the communities. I'd like to share with you some of the examples, particularly those have been implemented by the International Center for Agriculture in Dry Areas, led by Professor Dee Bovis. Soil-based storage practices such as rainwater runoff from a small catchment. It's collected at the lowest point in the downstream. And there is another intervention where the runoff is captured, which should be enough. And there should be the time should also be enough to infiltrate the water into the soil and stored in the crop root zone to support the crop growth. There are other interventions on farm and landscape type of water harvesting systems by creating runoff strips. A catchment strip of enough width is kept basically uncultivated. It's smoothened to provide very smooth runoff to the adjacent cultivated strip. So the rainfall plus runoff is stored, which could be used by either shrubs or even crops. It depends on the amount of water that is captured. There are other interventions, say for instance, in terms of collecting water in terms of small microcatchment, medium to size reservoirs, which could be used for livestock watering for other purposes as well. There are also trade-offs but I like actually to share with you, there is a key issue with rainwater harvesting systems that those are usually labor intensive, but now there are interventions available through mechanized rainwater harvesting systems. There are trade-offs of rainwater harvesting systems. Climate uncertainty is really impacting because it leads to large variations in rainfall, which may disrupt water availability for both domestic and agriculture uses where these interventions are implemented. Here also, the engagement of local community is fundamentally important. Next. In the end, I'd like actually to share with you two resources. One published by the UN Water Task Force on Unconventional Water Resources. I had the pleasure to coordinate that task force, and the other book, which was published a couple of years ago by Springer on unconventional water resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mansour, for an overview of non-conventional water resources and the potential to adapt to climate change. Let's now hear from 3 case studies what is the impact locally that these non-conventional water resources can have. So I would like to give the floor to Pablo Oces, who is going to talk about fog harvesting in Chile. Please, Pablo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Some places is good afternoon, good morning, whatever. So my invitation is fog as a water for the future, or a dream of few, because I don't want to write a dream of fools, but we can answer that maybe, or I want to help to answer this proposal. The study case is a trustable case, is fog water collection in the driest desert on earth, in the Atacama Desert. So in that way, we can talk about why a new source of water matters, because it's a new water source. In that way, the Atacama Desert, of course, face water scarcity because of his nature. In Chile, still, we have a million of people with water shrinkage. And if we open the window, 40% of the world population have no access to potable and safe water. So I open the tap, but 40% cannot do that. So what is water harvesting? It's a passive system, don't need extra energy to work. We trap what we called locally camanchaca. Camanchaca is the coastal fog with wind. Camanchaca is a native word, so it lasts for the last 1,000 years as a common water resource. Some numbers, it generates up to 10 liters square meters a day, so it's water from 1 square meter. And as I mentioned before, requires no energy, so it is ideal for remote, informal areas or off-grid areas. This is a relevant point. We do research trying to expand the frontier or the border of knowledge in the Atacama. We have a research station there, 25 years of research in field research. And we produce a continuous data set in fog water science and fog water information, climatology, and meteorology of the fog. We do education to transfer the technology for the communities and the local people. And we're trying to create, as the professor mentioned, community empowerment. This is a very relevant point to keep in mind. So following with the idea, kind of uses of that water. And I want to go with some numbers. We can produce an average of 300 liters a day from a classic fog collector. It's 300 liters. It means over 50 liters a day for a family. It's more than what the families have right now in some places in our country, in the desert, or of course in some places of the world. So it's a real source of water. And also, it's not only water for drink. We can generate food, as you can see in the pictures. You can see strawberries, lettuces, and after that, very fresh and cheap to and locally produced. So it is a healthy way to get water and get food. And also in other hands, in some places where mining, for example, is developing, is a dust stabilizer, it cooperate in road construction. So in the end, it's more than only water for drink. It's water in the whole significance of that word. Following which opportunities we see or we can reach. High quality of water collectors is a clue. In the picture, you see the kind of collectors that can produce the 300 liters a day, but the trustability of the machine or the device is a fact, because if fails, the communities don't say the collector fails. The people say water from fog doesn't work. So we should keep an eye on the quality of our interventions. And in the other hand, as was mentioned before, how we can predict this water. Can we modulate? Can we forecast? Yes, we can. We know how to do it. In that way, we developed as a first platform an online device that is able to show you how much water you can get, when you can get that amount of water, and where. So 3 questions, very relevant. This is the fog water map, and it gives us predictability for every place, for every season, for each need. And this both together, I mean, predictability or forecasting and good technology are the clue, in my opinion, and it's my suggestion to all the people here to go forward with this new water source. So finally, I want to show some important point. I believe, I really trust in for water is more than a dream. It's a real water source. It's a real source for driest places everywhere they are, not only in the desert. But we need investment, we need innovation, and we need community involvement, but also public policy involvement. At the moment, water from fog is not an official source of water in most of the countries, so it's not legal. You cannot provide water from the traditional sources. We need land planning to reserve areas, technology, and jump. And this is important, from handcrafted water to industrial water source. In that way, I want to show this video. This is the water. It's running all the time, so it's always coming on, and it's more than a dream. It's real water resource for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pablo, for sharing your experience of fog water harvesting in Chile. I would like now to move to the second case studies. So we'll give the floor to Mark, who will talk about rainwater harvesting in Senegal. Mark, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, and thank you for joining this session. I wanted to talk about managing rainwater and runoff for land and water conservation in Senegal. My name is Mark Sives. I'm the director of IRA, the International Rainwater Harvesting Alliance, which is a Geneva-based NGO dedicated to promoting rainwater harvesting as an effective tool and response to water scarcity and impact of climate change. We also support local partners, local initiatives that showcasing rainwater harvesting initiatives, and these initiatives should serve as a proof of concept to just convince on improving water security, health, livelihood, and resilience for people as well as for ecosystems. Rain on our side is clearly considered as a forgotten resource. although it's a key resource when it comes to water security, providing quality and quantity, especially in schools, health centers, villages, is also bring soil humidity when it comes to agriculture targeting food sovereignty. It creates the conditions for ecosystems restoration. It's all about coping with extremes, the too much water, the not enough water, the droughts and floods. It's about also cooling the cities. This whole trend of like reintroducing nature in the cities will go along like with reintroducing water within our cities. So I just wanted like to have like a shot on that. So not going long on the context, climate is changing. So we might have like longer dry periods, more intense rainfall that will induce a greater loss of soil erosion, less groundwater recharge, and further reducing access to water for communities. So there's on our side, like we believe that there is a shift that needs to happen, a shift that is like a threefold strategy and a systemic approach from water, soil, and tree, with at the heart the people, because as part of a integrated water resource management strategy, rainwater can really become a catalyst like for health and livelihood, and strengthen resilience for communities and ecosystem. Zooming in on the case studies of Senegal, so the context was is a decline on the groundwater levels, substantial rise of temperature over the years, limited rainfall, intense deforestation, and phenomena of increased soil erosion and degradation. And since 2021, even earlier actually, but with some farmer groups, like we really pushed like to conduct and lead soil and water conservation efforts, like really like working on the land, making bunds, gabions, whatever land structure that could retain and slow down the runoff, so to make sure that the water remain, and which gives opportunity to then like recharge or reforest. As I said, like people is at the heart of this systemic change. So in 2021, they were hesitant. They were just like, who are these guys like designing or redesigning or perimeters or fields, wanting to build like earth bounds, half moons, and all of that. In 2022, like the first results emerge. And this is like a building trust process where people were like, okay, yeah, indeed, like the yields have increased, the water is more present, and we start seeing like some results in the wells, like with the water table raising. In 2023, 2024, people were convinced, and they are now like queuing like to just do more of this land and water and soil management structure. It has improved the water retention, it has improved the humidity, and they are ready to join the effort in 25 and apply more of these bioengineering techniques. The good thing with bioengineering is that it gets stronger and stronger year after year. So as Mr. Shehu, head of Goria Village, said, before, like we were seeing like the rainy season as a threat and rain as a threat. This has become a resource. Before, like we could not reach our fields roads were unpracticable. Now we have it as we look at it as a resource. It's accessible. We get to our fields and we have better results. Yeah. On our hand, and this is why this kind of a call for action, but because we can all demultiply this, but we've been rehabilitating 83 hectares of land, creating ponds, 15 kilometers of tons bunds of half moon, 550 half moons, almost 2,000 households reach throughout the intervention area. And yeah, Enrico, just a call to get together to make this voice stronger. Rain is not enough again yet considered as a valuable resource, though it can have a very strong impact. Let's try to push for collection, storage, make sure that the water remain, and for health, for the food, for the ecosystem, as well as for the communities. And again, it all starts with the people, convincing the people, building trust, so that we can really make a rain as part of the higher on the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark, for sharing your experience on rainwater harvesting in Senegal and highlighting the role it has in terms of water and food security. We now move to the last of the 3 case studies. So I will give the floor to Hanan, who will talk about runoff water harvesting in Lebanon. Hanan, the floor is yours.
Hello, I'm going to talk about the case from Shuf Biosphere Reserve about non-conventional water management. So starting with the water status in Lebanon, we have the average precipitation in Lebanon is 800 millimeters, with the maximum precipitation occurring in around 1,400 millimeters in the high altitude Mount Lebanon range, and while the minimum is found in the northeast of the inland Bekaa Valley for around 200 millimeters. And this dramatic difference is caused by the country's topography, which traps moisture air from the Mediterranean Sea on the western seaward slope. On the other hand, we can see that Lebanon's water scarcity is extremely high, driven by a combination of economic crisis, climate change, and poor infrastructure, leading to severely reduced access and unequal distribution of water across the population. So the agriculture sector consumes the most, around 60 to 72%. Taking an example of Beirut, Mount Lebanon, we can see the supply available, which is 171 million cubic meter. Unfortunately, we are still in deficit for 44.5 million cubic meters, and many of the losses go through poor infrastructure. And there is this unmet demand is covered through private wells and over extraction of groundwater. So over the 10 years, we have noticed the impact of climate change, mainly on the snow cover, knowing that snow plays a central role in recharging the karst aquifer in Lebanon and supplies 30 to 40% of the annual runoff, mainly spring discharge. With the increase in temperature, we can also find the snow line elevation shifting from 1,500 meters to around 1,900 meters. Yeah. So in the Shuf Biosphere Reserve, which was announced as a biosphere reserve in 2005 by UNESCO, it lies in the southern part of the mountain range of Lebanon. It covers an area of 539 square kilometers, and it's a home for over 170,000 inhabitants spread over 28 municipalities. And SPR is divided into 3 zones: the core zone, where the protection of the natural reserve, mainly the cedar and the cedar reserve; the buffer zone, where activities take place like ecotourism and agriculture; and the transition zone, which are the villages surrounding the SPR, where sustainable resource management practices are promoted. So what's the importance of nature-based reserves like the Shuf biosphere as water stewards in water-stressed region like Lebanon? First, the reserve acts as a natural sponge, recharging aquifers, supplying water to downstream communities, minimizing soil erosions and sedimentation, regulating the water flow, enhancing the water quality, and of course, it's resilient to drought. How does the Shuf Biosphere Reserve in Lebanon serve as an example of how non-conventional water management practices can enhance climate adaptation, ecosystem restoration, and socio-economic resilience in water-scarce regions? Starting with the hill lakes and water reservoirs, where there is a network of 111 hill lakes collecting around 120,000 cubic meters, each having tailored to the specific water resource and intended use. We categorize these reservoirs or hill lakes into first rainwater harvesting lakes, which capture seasonal rainfall and serve critical roles in irrigation, reforestation, and wildfire prevention. The second part, which are groundwater-fed reservoirs, which are filled through controlled pumping and primarily support agricultural activities. And the third are spring-fed natural clay basins, which are naturally sealed basins that retain spring water, offering a reliable water source for farming and grazing in remote areas. Through an example of one of the projects, which introduced a remote controlled precision irrigation system in order to save water, we had an activity where we had to increase the capacity of a hill lake to 7,500 cubic meters and linking it to a small water reservoir, which is 1,400 cubic meters, by enhancing the water catchment, as you can see in the figures, by a riprap channel with some more check dams to reduce the water flow into the sedimentation trap before heading to the hill lake. Although this quantity wasn't sufficient for the whole seasonal demand, we were able to at least delay the groundwater extraction by at least 2 months. And the results of the runoff, we were able to increase the runoff harvesting by 200% in year 2024. The second part, which are restoring abundant agricultural terraces. And the main objectives is to improve water retention, enhance rainwater infiltration, promote soil stability, and support climate resilient rain-fed agriculture. And mainly the type of cultivation in these terraces were traditional native fruit trees and native aromatic herbs. And as you can see here in the figures, the designs of the terraces, how the intervention or how the implementation took place. Those sustainable agriculture opened opportunities to enhance people's livelihoods, creating more jobs and linking the producers and to the consumers, leading to a green economy. Why is the community engagement and governance so important? First of all, locals understand the land, the climate, and cultural practices. Second, when people are part of the process, they are more likely to protect and maintain the systems for a longer term. Third, the participatory approaches help manage conflicts over water use. And fourth, the bottom-up stewardship ensures policies are grounded in real needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hanan, for sharing your experience and showing how terraces and small agricultural reservoirs can help support agricultural activities in Lebanon. A special thanks to all the case studies, holders who showed the impact that these non-conventional water resources can have locally. We now remain with 1 question or 2 questions to be discussed in how we promote these non-conventional water resources? How can we promote their uptake? And this will be the topic of discussion in a panel which is moderated by Marco Orlando, and to whom I will give the floor now for the moderation.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, Enrico. I hope you can hear me loud and clear, and congratulations on convening this webinar today. Great examples from different geographic environments, great listening to these experts. And I'm sure that even the panel session that is starting right now, although short, will be very interesting because we will have with us two eminent speakers, Dr. Tulinave Mwamwila, Deputy Director Lecturer from the Water Institute, Tanzania, and Dr. Diba Weiss, Independent Consultant on Water, Land, and Ecosystems. So each speaker will address a couple of questions. We have 15 minutes in total, but later on we will have maybe some minutes for Q&A. So whoever is attending this meeting, this webinar, please, if you have any comments or questions, you can of course use the chat box, and we will try to go through them later on. So we will start from the first question, which addresses the barriers. The question is, what are the main technical, socio-economic, and institutional barriers to the upscale of non-conventional water resources? And I propose that we start from Dr. Tulinave Mwamwila, then we will go to Dr. Diba Weiss, and for the second question instead, we will do it the other way around. So Dr. Tulinave, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marco. As introduced, my name is Tulinave Mwamwila from Water Institute, an agency of the Ministry of Water here in Tanzania. I would like to start in reacting to the question, to the first question. I'd like to start with the background information, a bit brief. When you talk about non-conventional, some will be wondering what is conventional. So I wanted to talk a little bit with regard to Tanzania. For example, in my country, Tanzania, when you talk about conventional water resources, it includes the surface water from rivers, lakes, springs, and then subsurface water from boreholes. And then with engineering design techniques, this water from these sources is transported and distributed to save population within communities in rural or urban settings, hence centralized. However, since ancestral times, informal approaches to save the water demands have existed, mostly in decentralized manner. And these, in African countries, even including Tanzania, especially with rainwater harvesting. You may have heard of Kanat in North Africa, where the water runoff water is channeled from as low as 300 meters below the surface in areas with annual rainfall as low as 300, and still is able to meet the demands of those countries for longer times. But also in Tanzania, we have all these local in situ rainwater catchment systems for retaining water, known in various local names. For example, we have these raised broad basins, which locally are known as Vinyungu, or excavated banded basins known as Majaruba, and canals which will be conveying water in open channel for as far as 10 kilometers to downstream areas, with damming system for allowing water into households which are along the way. And these have lasted even today. When you visit some of these places, you find traces of this, but then they were never expanded. But at the same time, water purification mechanisms are there, from using specific pot types to grinding certain seeds to purify the water for use. So even though individual and localized testimony of their efficiency exists, they've remained as non-conventional. So when you talk about the barriers for upscaling, I could talk about it from the technical, social, and institutional perspective. When you talk from the technical perspective, I would say there's limited knowledge and capacity needed to understand and maximize potential of these non-conventional, or we can even call them indigenous techniques. Their documentation is limited, not easily accessed, as well as most of these are orally channeled from one family to another, or one elder to a younger one. And at the same time, there's aspect of climate variability. For example, for rainwater harvesting, the informal way, it's a typical practice. For example, in my country, people, whenever it rains, they will line up small basins, small storage facility along the eaves of the roof. But these are deemed ineffective and unreliable because after a very short time, once the rain stops, you have no water again. So advanced techniques are essential to maximize their potential to ensure that sufficient water is being stored to save even in dry season, but also water is kept in good quality. From the social perspective, there is perceived inferiority when you talk about, for example, rooftop harvesting. People would always raise a number of concerns against it, despite having good rooftops in place, and while complaining on unreliability of a centralized system. So it's a matter of best management practice information to be there, but also high costs on investing in this system. However, this is only, we know it's only the initial cost, for example, the storage system. But at the same time, youth disengagement to preserving and learning of these traditional methods, especially in urban areas. But lastly, I would like also to add from the institutional perspective, the policy neglect, low acknowledgement and recognition of the potential non-conventional water, but at the same time, limited legal support for enforcing these. We can term them as customary water rights, but also encouraging adoption of these non-conventional water. We have had, for example, local government authorities tasked to develop bylaws, rainwater harvesting bylaws, but then this has been not that much effective. And they are there to very effective in my countries where it requires new residents. You must have a design and plan for rainwater harvesting system, but also limited capacity building for empowering the new generation of practitioners and documenting this indigenous knowledge for broader dissemination. So I can, in short, that would be my response for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have to move on to the second speaker. The floor is yours, Deep. You're muted.
I'm sorry, Marco. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, Enrico, also for having me the opportunity to talk to this important people and address some of the barriers and opportunities associated with rainwater harvesting. I'd like also to thank the speaker, Dr. Kader, and case studies for highlighting some of the issues that are in many places of the world. Talking about barriers to upscaling rainwater harvesting system, I'd like to say that rainwater harvesting has received growing attention over the past few decades. Yet practical implementation remains limited, actually. Many efforts remain theoretical, fragmented, or poorly maintained. The key barriers actually associated with technical ones include some of the knowledge gaps. There are widespread confusion actually between rainwater harvesting and other practices like soil water conservation. Many cannot understand the role of runoff. There is no rainwater harvesting without runoff. So a lot of people consider soil water conservation as water harvesting. And where rainwater harvesting is applicable is a lot of confusion around. There is a problem actually with capacity, human capacity. We see it everywhere. If you have the experience in planning, designing, and maintaining the system, you know rainwater harvesting requires precision, especially when you talk about contours and structures. If it's not precisely done, then it will not work. And people usually say that this is not working, not because they are not taking appropriate measures, but rather that the concept is not working. Another issue technically is that this system requires some integration. Rainwater harvesting rarely works in isolation. It has to be integrated with other land and water management strategies, which is not the case in many places. And results are not as good as we expect when it is integrated with other activities. Some climate limitations are associated with technical aspects. In arid regions, for example, prolonged drought mean insufficient runoff. And sometimes the system viability is in doubt. People grow sometimes trees in areas where runoff cannot be guaranteed every year. And then the whole thing fails. However, when you talk about socioeconomic barriers, the main socioeconomic barrier is the limited investment. We have lots of problem in securing rainwater harvesting investment. It's viewed as high risk and unprofitable, especially with this strong environmental component like land restoration or for reforestation. Countries, especially in the South, don't prioritize environmental aspects, so they don't put incentives for investment. That's a big problem. As indicated by Dr. Kader, the community involvement is low in many places. Local population are frequently left out of planning and implementation, which reduces the ownership and long-term viability. Cost is another issue. There are storage costs, usually for human consumption, reservoirs and others, require lots of storage capacity, which is expensive. Many resist transitioning from traditional to modern rainwater practices. That's another cultural issue, and you see it in many places in the South. The institutional barriers include some weak or harmful policies. We see in the South policies that does not provide enough incentives to promote rainwater harvesting. In some places, actually, policies are harmful. We have a case where subsidies, for example, reflect negatively on the implementation of rainwater harvesting in many places and undermine the projects that we do. Usually, institutions have a narrow focus. They often prioritize surface water storage. They ignore other important forms like soil moisture. Dr. Kader indicated about the microcatchments, where the soil is the greatest reservoir for water, which helps growing the plants in what we call a green water, and groundwater recharge that put the storage in underground. This mainly overrun, and they are not prioritized, where the focus is on surface storage, some reservoirs that are not cheap and expensive. There is some coordination gaps, especially in water rights. Upstream, downstream dynamics are not really considered, where the people downstream are complaining about the activities upstream. Integrated watershed management are often neglected. That's where rainwater harvesting can be integrated and beneficial to everybody, which leads to conflicts and inefficiency. Limited public capacity is another institutional barrier. Institutions often lack trained staff or effective framework. In summary, to scale rainwater harvesting meaningfully, we need more than technology. We need system thinking, cross-sector collaboration, and community-centered approaches supported by smart policy and adequate funding. These are the main barriers that I can see at scale for rainwater harvesting, especially in the South. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deeb. Thank you very much to Linabe. Very enlightening responses, and I think both of you already anticipated maybe some mechanisms that we can, of course, use to promote non-conventional water resources for food and water security. I wish to ask you if you have any more comments on possible levers and opportunities for doing so. I must remind you that we have to make good time of time. We don't have much time left. So if you want to answer also this question, could you stay within 2-3 minutes, please? We'll start from D this time.
I should start, Marco?
Yes, please
Okay.
stay within 2-3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Of course, we talk about barriers, but actually there are a lot of other opportunities or enablers, what I call them, to scale rainwater harvesting up. The first opportunity is that rainwater harvesting is a cost-effective alternative to conventional water resources. In water-scarce dry environment, rainwater harvesting offers cheaper, decentralized option compared to costly groundwater pumping or conveyed water. It can help ease pressure on stressed environmental water resources. It can boost food production and restoring degraded lands. We have two very good examples from Ethiopia, where crops was doubled by rainwater harvesting, the yields, and in Jordan, where we implemented mechanized rainwater harvesting, and we changed the face of the desert by preparing the shrubs and the grasses with better soil moisture conditions. There are a lot of synergies with global restoration and climate agendas, like the UNCCD. We can secure investment and funds through many of these organizations, can position the rainwater harvesting as a compelling investment for global funding, like the Green Climate Funds, the Adaptation Fund, the Global Environmental Facilities, and so on. We can promoting water harvesting as water, food, climate resilience through diversified use. Rainwater harvesting fosters food diversification and stability. In many places, and especially in Africa, small-scale techniques, check dams, etc., enabled livestock water supply and expanded cropping options. Conjunctive use of rainwater harvesting with groundwater, blue water, and green water is also a great opportunity to increase the water productivity and water use efficiency of the system. We can harness climate funds and payment for environmental services. Actually, this is one solution to the lack of investment in environmental projects, especially in the South, by actually activating payment for environmental services with organizations that are supporting that, enabling the rainwater harvesting with payment for environmental models are available. They could mobilize private sector investment to while rewarding community-based conservation practices. Rainwater harvesting is more than a technique. It's a transformative lever for securing water, food, and climate resilience, especially in dry, vulnerable regions. By using indigenous knowledge to modernize rainwater harvesting systems, combined with policy incentives and global finance, we can unlock its full potential at scale. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deep. I will give the floor again to Linabe. You have 2-3 minutes. Any comments on levers and opportunities, please?
Okay, thank you, Marco. I know a lot have been said. I just wanted to just add a little bit. When considering the levers, for example, when you have in place levers like the guidelines, for example, in my country, recently we had introduced the National Rainwater Harvesting Guideline in 2020. And then we had revised the policy of water, where you see a lot, rainwater harvesting is featured a whole lot if you compare to prior version of the policy. So I see these as levers which are giving rise to opportunities which can be exploited effectively. When you talk about, for example, when you talk about the case of these policies and guidelines, we have had opportunities this year during the celebration for women, where the women within the water sector had organized a construction of demonstration projects in public schools. So this is an opportunity, like building on these legal frameworks in place, and then you work through these demo projects, inspiring and empowering the younger generation to understand this potential technology. But at the same time, we see when there's the desire for more education and awareness is needed for people to better understand these non-conventional waters. So the aspect of documentation, putting into words all these experiences so people can understand better how to better practice these non-conventional practices to effectively save their needs. So public education campaigns, but at the same time, I see opportunities with development of curriculums for an institution. For example, my institution, Water Institute, we train, we produce technicians and engineers. So this is an opportunity where we need to build up curriculums, which would develop these experts so that once there are many in place, you can guarantee that the dissemination of this knowledge is even better. And research, evidence-based research, there's opportunity for that, because when you talk about these indigenous techniques, we know that, like I'd mentioned earlier, like in most cases, it's oral transmission of knowledge. So my grandmother taught me this, my mother taught me this, but why do you have to follow these steps and procedures? So that's where the scientific argument is needed. Scientific processes are needed there to capacitate the procedures, the steps, so that people can better understand, okay, so here the concept is, when you talk about water purification approaches, grinding seeds are in place, it's actually coagulation and flocculation. So that is something people can relate easily and better. So I see evidence research are needed to capacitate this knowledge, these indigenous techniques and tools, so that people can easily grasp. And then when you have a whole lot of these documented around, and then in platform like this, like what we are doing now, people get to understand better and see, okay, where I can actually apply this. But at the same time, I see opportunities because funding is another challenge, even when you talk about research work, to promote these promotion campaigns, the funding is a challenge. So I see there's an opportunity for public-private community partnership, encourage collaboration between governments, NGOs. We have also civil society organizations, local innovators to pilot and scale out these non-conventional water resources. This is needed. And Mr. Toibos has shared all these opportunities with grants and support. So all this can add value to this. So pilot cases, physical models.
I think, sorry to Linave to interrupt, I think we must close. We have 10 seconds left.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, and sorry again. Unfortunately, we have 3 minutes left. We will take, I'm asking Elena, do we have time to take one question, or should we go ahead with the closing?
No, one question, I think, yes, the one that it was, yeah.
Thank you. And I'm reading that Ramon Rubio is asking Dr. Kadir maybe to elaborate very quickly in a few seconds, unfortunately, not more than 1 minute. He says, I'm really surprised about the potential and also limitations of fog harvesting. Really interesting. Any additional source I could get to research more about this approach? Thank you. So, Manzoor, very quickly, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. There are actually many resources on fog water harvesting systems. I shared in my presentation 2 main resources: the book on unconventional water resources, where a major chapter is dedicated to fog water harvesting systems, as well as the UN Water Analytical Brief on fog water collection systems. So there are details available. In the interest of the time, but I'll suggest, if the interest remains, I have actually shared my email address in my presentation, the last slide, and I'll be very happy to follow up on further questions or comments the participants may have on fog water collection systems. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And the floor is yours, Elena, for the closing.
Okay, so thank you very much. And unfortunately, the time is over, so we don't have really time for making some kind of recap of the interesting concept that came out from this 1 hour together. So just three things, and are the following. So the first one is that we launched an international in a working group among the International Association of Hydrological Science on non-conventional water use for integrated water resources management. So I really ask you to subscribe to the group so we can still be together and working together for the next 10 years inside the working group. The first meeting will be the next September 12 at 12 set Rome time. The second one is if you would like to remain in contact with us, please fill the survey that has been put available on the chat. And the third thing is that I'm happy that a lot of the results that came out from AguaMed are really perfectly in line on what has been said today. So I think that we really need to work much more on non-conventional water and in particular on rainwater harvesting that sometimes is not recognized as non-conventional water. I would like to ask you to open your camera for a group picture so we can have a memory of this 1 hour together. Thank you very much to all of you.
I'm gonna take the picture in 3, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. And thank you very much. Picture was taken.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.